Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Roll Down, a Teamfight Tactics podcast. We aren't screwing around on this episode. And you know why we're not screwing around on this episode? Because I'll get there. We have my wonderful co host, Sol, who joins me. As always, every week, Sol, welcome to the episode.
Tippy here as always.
Guys, we're going to come to my very special friend, Drowsy, in just a moment. And that moment is right now. Drowsy Sword, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much. Our very first return guest.
Yes, sir. Good to be back.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you. And guys, I mean, some say I would have left the best for last. Some say this man has been a pillar of the gaming community for 2 decades almost. Some would say
Wow, 2 decades.
That he has been less than 2 decades, and I have no idea how old he is.
Over 1 decade, but much less than 2 decades.
Probably over 1 decade.
It's over 1 decade, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think.
And maybe I thought he might be a little bit older than he is. And that's because we have a man who we have been watching since we were in high school. And that is Doa. Doa, welcome to the episode. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. I'm glad I could make it before they put me in a retirement home.
Well, they do say that we're the retirement home of podcasts. And that we will get onto as a reason. But guys, the Roll Down podcast, what we do here is we like to showcase Oceanic, Southeast Asian talent, specifically when it comes to teamfight tactics, for streaming, for events. But we're not going to talk about a lot of that today because there is a new set on the horizon. If you're listening to this on the day that it comes out, the set's already out. 6.5 is already here. We're a little bit late on the preview. But we are ready, and we're going to preview everything 6.5. Everything, all the new units, all the new synergies, what we like, what we're going to play on ladder, tournaments coming up, everything like that. But first thing is first, we have an international guest, our very first international guest. And it's very important that we hear a little bit about them first I don't think there'll be anybody out there listening who doesn't know Doa. But Doa, if you don't mind, for those of us or for those people who may be listening who aren't aware about your background, would you mind filling us in a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I've casted for 11 years is the exact number. I got started in 2010 for fun, and then 2011 professionally. Lived in Korea for 6 years. Did StarCraft 2, League of Legends, Hearthstone, Overwatch, other games from time to time. A lot of teamfight tactics lately. But yeah, just been casting for a long time and been trying to get more involved in the behind the scenes stuff with esports as time goes on, and been working more on the collegiate and high school side in the last couple of years since things have kind of moved all online and all that. But yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's not what I expected my career to be when I was in college or high school, but I can't complain, certainly.
Wonderful. And one of the things that you mentioned there is that you've moved into this wonderful world of teamfight tactics in recent years. Tell me about how you first got into TFT, where that sort of initial love came from. I mean, like most people who played League of Legends, they've at least tried TFT once or twice in their life. What sort of made it stick for you?
Well, so I started, the very first auto battle I played was auto chess, like the original auto chess. And I tried that a little bit, and I'm like, oh, it's kind of fun. And then some friends at the Overwatch League, some other casters were playing Dota Underworlds or Underlords or whatever it was called. And so I was playing that a little bit, and I was really enjoying it. And then Teamfight Tactics came out, and I was like, oh, well, this is like that, only it's the characters I actually know, because my background in League of Legends. And man, like after that came out, I think like everybody on the Overwatch League was just like playing TFT every chance they got. Like we had this kind of like talent room back, in the arena. And so like when one casting pair wasn't casting, they were like sitting at these desks playing TFT, and we were all talking about it and all that. So I got into it then and just like played a ton of it, even back in set 1. And then towards the end of set 2, I had decided, that was around the same time I decided to leave the Overwatch League. and I was looking for opportunities to cast TFT because I was like, I really like this game. You know, I want to give it a shot. And Frodan, who I knew from StarCraft 2 stuff way back when, and just been a friend for a lot of years, was casting a TFT tournament for a company called Fandom and asked if I wanted to cast it with him. So I did, and it was a ton of fun, and been casting ever since. So yeah, my first tournament was set 2. I can't believe we're already on like set 6.5 now. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Guys, I don't want to hog the spotlight here. I want the chance for all of us to sort of get in on the action. I'd love it if I could open up the floor here a little bit and chat to you, both of you as well, and especially Drowsy, our returning guest. We had you on our set 6 preview episode after all the first information dropped. I'd love to hear your sort of. We're now at the end of set 6, start of 6.5. How's this sort of set been for you? Are you raring to go for 6.5?
For 6.5, I'm pretty raring to go because during set 6, I was trying to figure out my play style because like when they introduced augments, that actually changes like the game like really like hugely, right? It's like you can actually like go first or like go bot 4 based on the augment you pick, and that took me a while to like realize like how like detrimental augments were. And playing flex was like hard. Like you had to like choose the right augments. Like Thrill of the Hunt was a safe augment for like a Jin comp or something like that. And so I was struggling a little bit, but then I found my identity a bit later. So I think a lot of you guys know that I play a lot of assassins, a lot of Talon, a lot of Imperial. But I think, yeah, they just realized set 6 just made me realize I'm good at like reroll comps and like one tricking. So for 6.5, I'm trying to play like more to my strengths this time. Like more reroll comps such as Rek'Sai, Axe reroll. So I'm keen to be a degen. As bad as that sounds, I'm keen to play more of those like 2-cost 3-star comps.
Love it. Great to hear. We're so glad to have you back as well, Paolo. So thank you very much.
you.
So I want to come to you.
Sure.
You've played a game of Live 6.5 today.
Yes,
Some of us have.
one whole game.
One whole game in
One
OC.
whole game.
Early. It's not out here yet.
Yeah.
On
You're early.
down here in the southern hemisphere, we get a few things, and that some of those things mostly involve the early release of Teamfight Tactics sets. So talk to me a little bit about your initial games. I mean, everybody's playing, everybody's streaming.
I played a few.
Yeah.
I played a bunch of PvE, like a lot of people did before the set came out. This time around with PvE, I was focused a lot more on just being a lot more experimental rather than just like trying to perfect the better comps. So what that looked like was I tried a lot of reroll specifically. Like I would just like pick random units, reroll them, and see how it went. I played like a little bit of flex, a little bit of fast A, but like I usually just like leave that to like the better players to figure out exactly what the board configurations look like. Because yeah, I mean with flex comps especially, it's never like a rigid 8 units. It's always like 3-4 core units, and then the other 4 are usually tech units that you have to like play according to lobbies, and it's like meta dependent as well, right? But basically, the long way of saying like I spent most of my time just rerolling. And the one game I played today, I rerolled Twitch. I rerolled Twitch with a bunch of innovators and got a second, and it felt pretty good.
I bought a bunch of rerollers on the podcast. What's going on here, man?
Yeah.
Not me.
Thank you.
I haven't been much of a reroller since the Star Guardians comp in set 3. That's the last time I really played a ton.
That's so good.
Yeah. It was.
For full disclosure, I do typically play flex comps. It's
Yeah. Okay.
It did
Whatever you say.
I started this time off
backtracking now.
with playing reroll comps though.
Yeah, I believe you. I've seen your LOL chess. I know what you're really about.
Yeah, if you look at my six wrapped, my most played unit was Yuumi. So that's how you know I'm a flex player.
There you go.
I played one game of 6.5, but it was Kate reroll. Don't try that. Don't try Kate
Don't
reroll.
play
That
Kate
sounds
reroll.
terrible.
That
I went
sounds
A.
absolutely awful.
It's so bad.
All right, we're gonna get into the bulk discussion, and that is, of course, 6.5. It's a big
Yep.
set, 6.5,
Mm.
replacing a lot of units. I want to sort of open up with a question, and I'll start with you, Doa. What was the unit you were most looking forward to not coming back in 6.5?
Oh, that's a good question. What did I look forward to not coming back in 6.5? It's probably a tie between. I mean, I use them almost every game too, but it's probably a tie between Janna and Yumi, I would say, because it's well, hmm. Yeah, okay. It's Janna, Yumi, or Kog'Maw, maybe, because I hated that Kog'Maw reroll comp. I hated playing against it.
Yep.
It was boring to play. But Janna, Yumi were great units, don't get me wrong, but like
Mm.
they were a little bit too good. Like it was a little bit trait-wise and ability-wise, we saw it. Like they were in almost every
Yeah,
comp.
for real.
And why wouldn't you put them in? They were that good, So they were good units, but I'm kinda glad they're gone. I think that was a good choice to take those out.
I concur entirely. Me personally, I was really looking forward to them removing Cho'Gath, and then they never did. So, more fool me.
Oh,
Well,
yeah. Colossus.
He's okay. He's okay.
Yeah.
Drowsy, talk
I
to
w-
me a little bit about
Yes.
something that you were interested in getting rid of.
I was interested in getting rid of, well, actually just like Janet and Yumi and like Cho'Gath, like Colossus, I think. But they only removed Cho'Gath, like they only removed Scion from Colossus. Because it was kind of a big problem during set 6. They had a lot of
Yeah.
balancing issues during it, especially the Kai'Sa patch. Oh yeah, I wanted Kai'Sa out for some reason. Because I didn't like that single patch. Because it was just the Colossi were too tanky, and then the Kai'Sa could just like kill like the most capped boards, like the capped level, like a 3-star 4-cost board. You can die to a Kai'Sa 1, like during that patch. So I was looking forward to Colossus being removed. But also with Jan and Yumi, I think I was actually looking forward to them too, because they provided a lot of like utility during that set. They replaced it with like Senna and stuff, but I just don't know how strong they are in terms of utility.
Yeah, we talked
She's
quite a lot
good.
on this podcast about the transition out of Colossus and what we thought they would do. They didn't end up doing what we sort of had predicted that they might do in bringing in a lot more tank, like sort of higher cost tanks to replace them necessarily. But at the end of the day, I think so far it doesn't look like things like Kai'Sa and Galio are going to be far too demanding, at least in the initial
No.
stages.
Mm.
Sol, talk to me a little bit about your hopes. I mean, we've been on this podcast together for 15 episodes now. Everybody knows that we hated Colossus from
Yeah.
the get-go. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm probably not going to talk too much about Colossus. Everyone, regular viewers of the pod will already know how much I hate Colossus units, so that's fine. I would have really liked to see, Cho'Gath replaced with a different tank, just because he feels really awkward to play. Like, he feels very polarizing. He's either unkillable or like he's very
Fish.
killable. Are they like either he has too many stacks or he doesn't have enough stacks, right? Like either you got him from box, had him since like 2-1, he's like too big, or you didn't make him until like stage 3 and he's like not very tanky. I think other than that, I mean, I'm happy with the legendaries they decided to rotate out, but I think I would have liked to see some of the returning legendaries just like be a little bit like somewhat reworked in terms of like abilities. Like Jinx is more or less the same with like a slight change in her AI. Like Jace is more or less the same. Like a lot of like these legendaries that we've like Victor's the same. A lot of these legendaries that we've already played with are like more or less the exact same units. And yeah, I don't know like how big that actually is, but like I kind of would have liked to see some of that shaken up. And I think other than that, I'm really really sad to see Janna Yumi go. It got me a lot of LP.
Mode.
but that probably had to happen.
Everybody.
So it's okay. It was necessary. They were a little good.
Some merge.
Yeah, let's pivot now because we've got a lot of new units, and I'm sure that there are plenty that we can talk about for hours on end. I'm going to start with one that's already been mentioned, and that is Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai is a a new mutant striker bruiser. Brilliant traits. I will say first off before we get into anything, the traits on this unit are amazing. And a lot of you out there call Rek'Sai a he. Rek'Sai is canonically in the League of Legends lore a
she.
woman. So please, appropriate pronouns from now on. Rek'Sai, she. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, everybody. Drowsy, Rek'Sai, talk to
Yes.
me a little bit about her.
Rek'Sai just so the ultimate, the ability, it's kind of like Trundle, if that makes sense. Like
A little bit, yeah.
so it deals like about 125%, as I remember, of her 80, and it's like Trundle steals target's armor and magic resist. So at 3 stars, it was about like 60% armor and magic resist. So you can just put her in front of a tank, and then she gets very tanky. So there was a Rek'Sai Revo comp that I played a few times in PvE. Oh man, she was so unkillable if you had like Bloodthirster, like Trundle items basically, like Bloodthirster, Runant Hurricane. I'm not saying she's a Trundle clone, but she's very similar. So you can play like a Bruiser comp similar to Trundle Reroll. And it's very good. And also the fact that she has free traits, and these are very good traits. So like with flat AD, flat health, and mutant, like she gets so much bonus. It's nuts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, really interesting comparison to Trundle there. I think it's very apt as well. I think one of the other things that makes Rek'Sai so good is those traits. The very, very strong early combination of Striker and Bruiser is really, really good. There's a lot of early cost units that make really nice pairs early on for strong early boards. Mutant may be less impactful overall in that aspect, but really, really, really strong, really interesting. I want to turn to you, Doa, now, because you did a video recently where you discussed all of the new units, a lot of the new traits, and it was absolutely fascinating, really helpful. You know, I sent it around to a lot of people who wanted to come in and learn the game. A lot of friends of mine remarked back how helpful it was. But I want to talk to you about the big one, the big unit, Silco, coming to League of Legends. What are your opinions on Silco's inclusion? First of all, we've talked a lot about how the inclusion of Silco is an interesting slope for TFT to fall into, but most importantly, how he feels as a unit.
I think he's great. I think it's a really fun unit, honestly, and I think it does a good job of bringing the lore of the Arcane show to life. In that, like, he's a team player. He's here to support you, but he's got like a sinister side to him, and he's kind of a double-edged sword as someone to be associated with, because he does give your team like massive buffs, right? Like with the Mastermind giving a lot of mana to people in front of him, hugely helpful. And his ability gives you, a lot of attack speed, gives you like a big buff as well. But it makes you explode after like 8 seconds too. So you have to really be careful and manage your carries properly, so that you don't get to a situation where he's buffing your carry too early and then it blows up before it has a chance to end the game. Because I think I've probably lost as many rounds as I've won because of Silco. So I think he's a really fascinating unit. And I don't know how to use him just yet. I don't think anyone really is perfected using him, and it's going to be different every game. But he's going to be a fun unit to like learn about as the set goes on. So I really like it. I think it's cool that we have like, our own special champion just for TFT and all that. And he was a great choice. So yeah, it's cool. It'll be neat to see how the Silco play evolves over the course of the set.
Definitely. And it's really cool, really, really cool that it's a legendary unit, I think, as well. As Sol, you mentioned earlier, it's nice when they mix up the legendaries. I think that changes the end of the game, and that's some of the most exciting portions of Teamfight Tactics is, let's say, stage 5 onwards. That's one of the most exciting periods for a player, for someone to watch, for people to get involved in. I want to talk about Renata Glask. I'm just going to say Renata from now on, and I'm going to bring this one over to Sol. We talked a little bit about it in the pre-show, actually. Doa, you were saying that you have used to play carry Renata on the PB quite a lot on stream. Tell me a little bit about it.
I think it was Doa who was specifically talking about. Was it Doa who was
Yeah.
specifically talking about like playing carry Renata?
Hmm.
But like,
yeah.
so she
Not
started off being
anymore,
pretty good at
but-
the start of the set. Very reminiscent of set 4 Morgana. In that she just needs a Morello, and then she just Morellos very large clumps of units. This is very like useful. Like it's a lot of dot, right? But they did change it to where when she dies now, the damage over time just disappears. It expires.
Mhm.
So that does significantly hurt her viability as a carry. I do think though she's still in a pretty solid spot in terms of just being general utility because she attack speed slows. That's always just gonna be like her cloud. I think it's like 15% attack speed slows everything it hits. So that's like just always gonna be a really useful a bit like effect to have access to, right? And she sort of feels that void that Janna left behind in being that sort of 4-cost flex scholar. But I don't know if we're gonna see too much Renata comps. At least in the first patch. She's still a solid unit for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally agree.
I'd agree.
It's hard because things change on the PBE so quickly that by the time you finish playing 5 very exciting, action-packed filled games on the PBE, maybe you go away for a couple of days, you come back, well, all of a sudden half the units that were
Everything's
being played
changed.
on every
Mhm.
board aren't getting played
Everything's
anymore.
different.
Which is good. I'm glad they do
Mm.
daily patches and tweaks. Like what's the point of a PBE if they aren't responding to the data that they get? So
That is true.
yeah, it's a lot to keep track of, but I'd much rather have them do that than be like a week of PBE and they're like, nah, everything's fine, ship it, It's I think we actually have seen some pretty good results come out of PBE testing in the past.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I think we're very lucky
Yeah.
as a community to have such a responsive dev team as well. They're so quick with a lot of changes, especially things that are brought to their attention. I mean, I know for a fact that any of the bugs that I had found playing on the PBE aren't live or weren't prevalent in the games I played on live this morning, which is very exciting, and that's great news. They do a really good job. I want to talk about another Chemtech unit, and that is Tryndamere, a 3-cost AD reroll carry challenger, smacks everybody with his big sword. Drowsy.
Yes.
Units like this, you're a reroll player. You love 3-costs. You love 2-cost rerolls.
Yes.
You're a Talon
Yes.
main. We'll come on to Debonair a little bit later. But I want to
Mhm.
ask a little bit about these kind of units. We haven't seen a significant amount of them in a little while.
No,
At least these AD carries. We have seen them over the sets previously, and they all fill different roles. We've got another one in Aurelia as well. I was wondering if you could sort of talk to me a little bit about what it's like to play these kind of auto-attacking, frontline, dashing around kind of attacking units.
yeah. So playing these kind of auto attacking units such as Warwick, Tryndamere, I don't know. I feel like you need some kind of sustain. Like there's a point where you can position them and then just die like instantly, you know. So it needs some kind of backup, like some tanky backup. I think when I played Warwick reroll, Warwick reroll, on set 6, so it was good for a bit, and then later on it needs like some side utility, some side tankiness, such as the Sandra, but the Sandra's gone. Like the Sandra was so useful for the Warwick comp because your Warwick was like frontline 80 carries like these always get popped without like some kind of sustain.
Hmm.
Like I think back in set 4.5, Slayers always had GA. If you guys remember
Yeah.
that. They always had some kind of GA and some Runons or something like that because they always just die like straight up. And but GA is gone as well. GA is gone. The Sandra's gone. So yeah, it's generally very risky without like a safety option, such as some. But they have BT. You can just put BT. That's what Bebe recommends for like
Oh yeah,
usual
for
carries.
Tryndamere? For
Yeah,
sure.
for sure. And like Quicksilver. It just so generally these are generally like if you don't have a sustain item, it's just riskier to play than like backline carries in general, in my opinion.
Interesting.
Or like free socialite. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
That's fascinating, isn't it? With the change to GA, I mean,
Mm.
now we have
Yeah.
another offensive item in the pool. Of course, it's Edge of
Mhm.
Night now, where if you
Tonight.
go under 60 or under 40% health, you temporarily get shrouded and you lose all the crowd control effects affecting you, which is very interesting and a really cool addition. I think in a lot of the discussions about why they got rid of Guardian Angel, they talked about that they just were never gonna. They wanted the units to be the units that they were, without worrying about how the GA interaction would potentially make them far too strong for what
Yone.
they were. Yone being
Yeah.
a prime example.
Yeah.
Even going back to
Or-
set 4 Aphelios, for example.
Set 3 Gangplank.
Ari,
Yeah.
Ari,
playing.
yeah.
Oh,
Set 3
dramatic
Liko
examples.
too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad
so
it's
dramatic.
gone. Yeah, I'm
Mm.
glad GA's out.
It was
Like,
always a
it's-
weird one, right? It was always a weird item in the item pool, GA, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was really useful because I mean, there were comps like the Star Guardians one, right, where you kind of needed it on Syndra during certain metas because your carry would get blown
blocked,
up often enough, you know. But if you look at this one, if you look at Edge of Night, it basically functionally does exactly what GA did, which is take the heat off of your carry that's being attacked. And you know, there's not really a difference in a practical sense between dying and coming back or losing aggro and dropping negative effects, you know?
Mm.
So it's I like it because it's a good way to do a similar thing without opening yourself up to all the issues, like even like, you know, an Urgot, you know, would, or Kai'Sa would cast through
Oh,
GA
yeah.
animation. Like, why do they get to
Oh,
and other
Yeah.
champions
It's-
don't, you know?
Oh,
So it's
so bad.
yeah, it's just a good move, I think, to get rid of GA
Yeah.
and put in something that does something functionally similar but is less problematic for a design, you know, a design team to have to worry about.
sure.
Agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool that we get to experience a new item style of play. I think that's really beneficial for the health of a set, as well as not only the units that they put in and take out, but of course the items that we get as well. They've changed them up several times over the last few sets, especially with the radiant items, the shadow items, the nerfing and the buffing and the changing. Ice cream cone springs to mind as one that's or chalice, I suppose it should be called, that was changed a while ago.
Ice cream cone.
I used to print mana in set 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost
They
one of the
had to
Sona
change it
mana
because
printer
of
build.
Sona.
Yep.
So
Oh,
these
I
are
remember that.
some of the things that are very exciting about TFT, and it's a big credit to the design team and the team who come up with all of these ideas and implement them. Doa, you were talking a little bit in the pre-show about a rival podcast that you run, the Teamfight Talk Show, where you had
Rival? You mean
Rival.
a friendly podcast from
Friendly.
across the sea, you know?
yeah, a friendly rival from across the sea, exactly. And you were talking that you guys had some of the designers on previously, so I was wondering what that experience was like, getting a chance to talk to the people actually responsible for working on new sets and on the game.
Oh, it's always great. I mean, we've had a bunch of the TFT devs on there a bunch of times now. You know, Mort, Kent Wu, Static. You know, we had Chloe and Linda on last week, and so it's always a ton of fun to talk to devs about, you know, what their view is on the game, because it's always a little bit different, of course, right? Because they're not just thinking about the game from what is the dreamland perfect competitive experience. It's more like, what is going to make the game that's the most fun to play is, at the end of the day, you know, the goal of the developer, or should be the goal of the developer, right? And if esports and that can go hand in hand, great. But I think it's good to get that perspective sometimes too, where it's like sometimes in the esports we kind of think of ourselves as like, or think of our space as like the most important thing to think about when you're designing a game, right? And that's not the case. You know, the most important thing is to make the game fun, right? And sometimes you have to have things in there that are less great for the high end competitive players, but just better for the majority of players overall. So I think that's an important perspective to get to. But it's also just a lot of fun to hear like stories of how a champion or a trait or an ability came to be, you know, or like some of the bugs and things like that. You know, I've gotten to do some of the internal play tests for some of the sets before they've come out, and it's always funny to see like some of the bugs. Like there was one I played where I forget which, I think it was before set 4 if I remember right, but where like for some reason the volume of like Warwick's yelling was like 200% higher than like everybody else. So everyone would be like normal sound, and then he'd be like, "Rah!" And you hear this like super loud Warwick, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we haven't, because they import a lot of stuff from Summoner's Rift, right? So sometimes
Mm.
it comes in different states, so they hadn't yet equalized Warwick's audio. So it's fun to kind of like hear about that stuff and see it once in a while. So yeah, it's just great, and it looks like a fun job. Maybe I'll do it sometime, but it's always fun to talk to people who are currently in the trenches, making the game.
Brilliant. I love that. It's so cool. It's so cool to be involved in. I mean, having even just having the PBE accessible to everybody is such a nice touch as well.
Yeah.
Sort of making everybody feel a little bit closer to the development side of the game. I know that a lot of people don't use the PBE for the intended purpose, which is to report bugs and talk about the game. But sometimes, guys, I will say this: set 7. If you see a bug, you got to report it. Okay, that's all I'll say from now on. If you see a bug on the
don't worry
PBE
about that. There's a lot of pros out there like doing just that. There's a Discord with pretty much all the pros in it, and the devs are in it too, and there's a lot of there's a daily, almost like minute by minute bug reporting that goes on there.
Wow.
Oh,
So yeah, definitely
Impressive.
definitely
That's
do
pretty
it.
cool.
But the pros are also on top of it.
I got it.
Especially, I gotta shout out Leduc, who is probably like, as I read through these threads that I read through every day, like that guy like finds more bugs and weird interactions than like anybody else. So he is doing great work there.
Shout out Leduc, well done. Thank you
Crazy.
very much for all your help. Let's let's stick with 6.5. I mean, there are a lot of champions left to cover. Soul, something that you're looking forward to.
Something that I am looking forward to, just like a champion,
A new unit,
or
yeah.
yeah, I'm looking forward to Irelia. I mean, she's not like a new unit, right? Like she was in set 3. I've played a little bit of Irelia, been having a lot of fun with her. I haven't been able to do it yet, but I'm excited to see how she plays with Assassin Spat. Because if you guys remember set 3, Infiltrator Irelia was a menace.
Oh,
Yeah.
But Infiltrator, for the big difference is Infiltrator scaled off of attack speed, not crit.
Mm.
It'll be very interesting to see how Assassin Irelia scales with because Sim scales with crit, not
Interesting.
attack speed.
I
But
haven't
in
seen that
general,
yet either.
yeah, I'm looking forward to Irelia. I've been having fun playing her. She's pretty fun.
I find that we see spats a little bit less than we used to. And definitely less than set 5, where you were given a lot of them through plenty of different means, and including sort of the lanterns in earlier sets as well. You saw a lot of spats. Definitely in set 3, there was a much higher, before they nerfed the chance to get spatulas, you saw much more of them. So I feel unless you get them from augments, which is something that we'll move on to, it's actually a little bit harder to pick up spatulas consistently now. But yeah, Aurelia, it's great to see Aurelia back. Loved Cybernetic Aurelia. I think it was very interesting. Very cool unit. So it's cool to see it back. We have 80 plus new augments. This is not the kind of show where we go through all of them. But I will I will say that especially for our overseas guests who it's already later into the evening, we do not go through all of them. However, it is going to be a little bit of a discussion that I want to have here with all of you, because I feel like it took them a little while in set 6 to get their ideas around exactly what they wanted out of augments. And Doa, I'll come to you here about the augments. There are a lot of changes. You don't have to name specific names, but is it a step in the right direction, you think, with some of the changes that you've seen on the PBE?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, most of the augment changes were just taking out the ones that dealt with the old traits that went away, like Academy and Imperial and all that. But there are some really fun new ones. And it does what it should, right? Where it's not like it's basically takes a system that I think was already working really well in augments and just adds to it, So there's stuff like what's it called, blue battery now, where basically everyone on the team gets like a little mini blue buff, where I think you get like 10 mana at the start of each fight or something like that. There's one where you can just get a couple extra orbs. There's a lot of fun stuff. I don't have a list in front of me, but I've been enjoying, going through it and trying different things. Discombobulator, I just played a game with that right before this podcast, and like it didn't do great, but it was fun to try out. At least I got a free Jinx like super early. But what I learned, we were talking about this before the podcast. Like I'm definitely gonna have to like 3-star some Yordles and then hope for it, and then maybe get lucky and get some like 3-star 2 costs or something like that, or 3-star 4 costs, I guess, if you can get like turn a 3-star Vex into something. So I think there's a lot of fun possibilities there, and I always think about it from the esports perspective a little bit too, where like what do I want to see, at Worlds and all that, and I think games like that would be really fun. So yeah, I think talk about systems that make the game fun. I think the augment system is great for that. It makes the game feel like more of a journey each time, rather than just trying to like hammer out a build that you feel is going to be good, and like did I hit, did I not hit. So I've always enjoyed TFT the most when I am able to play it flexibly, and make a lot of decisions like in the moment. And the augment system, I think, continues to be like the best version of that. So I've been really happy with it on PvE.
Yeah, fantastic. Drowsy, your thoughts on some of the augment changes in general?
Oh, so I think the new augments are really cool. I feel like there's more fun augments this time around, especially the gold ones. I've seen a lot of fun stuff. So speaking from those, Discombobulator, Recombobulator, or something like that. It's I saw one of our friends, Viagra. He was playing Yordles or something, and then he got this 3-star free cost. I forgot what it was. I think it was a Vex. I don't know. It was a free cost. And then he did the Combobulator thingy, and he got a 3-star Seraphine. It was crazy. I was like, oh my god. So I was like, there's so much possibilities. I think one thing I was thinking of is like, oh, just open fort until like 4-5, like 4-5 augments. Like there's just just get 3-star every single free cost you can, like get over 200 gold, and then recombobulate it. So it's like there's a lot of wild forts, and
That's brave.
it's pretty risky. Don't do it. I'll probably try it one time, but I don't know if it'll go great. But there's like one more that was really cool. I think it was Tiny Titans.
Oh yeah.
It's
That's
it
cool.
was crazy. Like it sounds broken. Well, it's probably not broken, but like your tactician goes 35 health, and so you can get 135 maximum health. That's actually quite cool. So it saves you, like let's say your things like 8th, like your position's like screwed up, like you don't have the right items, the synergies are not that great. You can probably just get a bleed out to top 4 angle if you just choose Tiny Titans. So there's more avenues to like save your game.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the augments again, and there's like a lot of fun variations on other ones. Like they have like cybernetic uplink, which is 250 health and restore 3 mana per second. There's cybernetic shell, which is 250 health and 45 armor. So there's neat like situational ones too that are just like more just it gives you more choice to target specific things on your team you want to buff, which is kind of cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Soul. We've got a lot of augments. So one of the things that really interested the two of us, I know from speaking to one another, was how they've kind of looked to prioritize agency on your board a little bit more, as opposed to things sort of more out of your control, giving you less emblems, looking for more fight power, immediate power on your board, things that buff up your traits, your units, things like that. I was wondering what your thoughts are about that sort of that shift towards more control over your board strength.
Yeah, I've been liking it a lot. There are, I mean, I could be wrong, but there are a lot less more augments, a lot less like trait reliant augments, compared to set 6. There's like there's a few, for example, like some of them's the strength line, like there's like the striker one, where all your strikers like stun first time like when they hit the enemy. I think it was the stun when they hit them or when they crit them or something. And then there's probably a few other ones, but like there are a lot more of those ones in set 6. Like there's like Payday, All for One, what is it, cram session, like all these like very very specific trait augments that like require you to sort of tunnel in pretty hard on that specific like vertical. I like that. Like, yeah, I like that. There's a bigger focus on sort of generically good augments that are
Mhm.
just good for your board. I also like a lot that that a decent amount of them do still semi-commit you to a certain style of play. So like they can't like just be purely generic, right? Like they can't all just be like item grab bags that give you a bunch of items. But stuff like for example like Phalanx, I'm encouraging you to play around like I think Phalanx is the one where everything in the backline has more like resistances. Like it's like 30 or something armor for everything in the backline. So it's almost like
Yeah.
a reverse makeshift armor. Yeah.
Mm.
And there's stuff like Backfoot, which encourages you to play around the traditional backline comp. There's Battle Mage, which I don't think anyone's figured out yet. That's the one where front 2 rows you get a bunch of extra AP. But I mean I like the inclusion of a lot of stuff. Like Knife's Edge was really the only sort of positional related ones in set 6. And yeah, it's nice to have a lot of more augments in that sort of range. And I really and one separate note, I really like the egg prismatic. That one's pretty fun.
Oh, that one. Dopamine rush.
I haven't gotten that one yet.
Yeah.
I've really
It's
been waiting,
dopamine
but I have
orbit.
not had that one pop up
Mhm.
yet.
No, I haven't
I
either.
think,
I haven't gotten it yet. I've seen it hatch a lot, but
Hmm?
yeah.
I see.
I haven't got the one that gives you a second copy of a unit as well. Whatever that
Double
was.
Oh,
Trouble?
Double Trouble, yeah. That one's pretty
That
fun.
confuses
that,
me.
that one's really interesting. There's a lot to like. For instance, I just had a situation today where I had like a 2-star brand and then another 1-star brand that was like the VIP for Debonair. So I had both of them in, and
Oh.
they were just like stunning everybody
Dude.
nonstop. It almost felt like Dark Blue Buff Rise again. Like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
if this was like a
That's
Double Trouble
legal.
game, if this was a Double Trouble game, it would be just insane, right? So I think
legal.
that augment specifically could lead to some really really fun games.
Yeah.
I think like there's some traits that I remember that these were really cool. They're like they benefit from the single trait as they were the units. Like I think free healthcare it's really cool, and I think it allows a lot of creativity to flex your comp. It's like free healthcare gives you like chemtech trait to like non-chemtech units.
Mhm.
It's super cool. So it allows for like more flexibility.
There's a
your
similar
board.
one with Hextech, I think, as well, right?
And Challenger too. There's
Yeah.
one that gives the
Mm.
Challenger buff to non-Challenger units,
Ooh,
It's
which is really
cool.
fun.
very cool.
Yeah.
So let's talk
Yeah.
about these new sort of unit types that we've got coming in. A big one, Hextech. We've got Debonair, who will be joining us as well. I want to go to Drowsy because Drowsy is a Talon player. Talon has been reclassified as a Debonair. I sort of want you to before you come onto your Talon lifestyle, I'd love to hear a little bit about Debonair. So, it is replacing a vertical style trait, so I would love to
Yes.
sort of hear about it.
So if you guys don't know what Debonair is, so all the Debonair champions, they gain bonus health and ability power, but there's also something called the VIP. So when you play this VIP, they activate the unique bonus that's available for VIPs. So let's say for Talon, the VIP Talon, he doesn't just do like magic bleed damage. He does true damage, and it lasts longer. So typically it lasts 7 seconds, but now for VIP Talent, it lasts $100. Not $100, 100% longer. So, but
I'll
thing
take
is,
$100.
I'll take $100.
If you put
but
$100 into
Talon,
the
sure.
game,
I'm down. But anyway, it's not exactly like Chosen's. The thing is, when you choose it, it's not like an instant 2-star. That's a bit too broken. It's like a glowing green thing. It just you get a 1-star copy of it. So when you want to play Debonaires, when you want to reroll Talon or something like that, you want the VIP unit first. You don't want to put items on the playing unit, or else you have to chase 3 stars. If that makes sense. So there's a lot of challenge to go with Debonaires.
interesting. And it seems that we're seeing a lot of different reroll compositions for Debonairs at the moment. We're seeing people play Brand, we're seeing people play Syndra, we're seeing people play Talon. And then, of course, we've got the two big units, two of which we haven't discussed yet, and that is the return of Draven. Draven,
Oh,
of
yes.
course, a feature in previous sets. We've got a couple more AD carries than we had the last set, I think it's fair to say, or definitely at the very least, a few more options for our AD carries instead of playing Yone or Jhin every game. Now Jin's got some backline friends like Draven. Zeri is a new
Hey.
unit and a very new.
What about Urgot?
Oh yeah, well,
Oh god, yeah.
Urgot
He's
was
great.
he was a second row carry, if anything, really. I think.
Yeah, well, he's more like Draven then,
Yeah, he's
right?
a bit more like Draven, unless you
forgot
get
Urgot was
VIP
God.
Draven.
That's true. Yeah, VIP Draven can be the back line.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
I haven't had very much luck with Draven yet, but I've never been a big
Aw.
AD player. I've always been more of an AP player, but I've gotten blown up by Draven like a lot of times on PvE. So he's definitely strong. That's for sure. If
Broken.
you get, the thing is like, I don't know if you can run Draven unless you get the VIP version of it, you know? And like sometimes there's a lot of games where like I'll see a VIP Draven and I just don't have the board to support that. I'm like, oh, I would love to play this, but it would require too much of a pivot to be able to do it. So that's where Draven is not, I think, the greatest in my opinion, is that like if you don't see him VIP, you're just not gonna buy him, I think most games. So I don't know what you do about that, but VIP Draven is certainly very strong right now.
One of the things that comes out with a new TFT set usually is that we get one of the newest League of Legends champions who also are dropped into our games, and we've had things like Akshan in previous sets who I had never heard of, Vex who I'd never heard of before because I'm not at least a League of Legends player. So you get to learn about these League of Legends characters. The newest one,
Right.
Zeri, a 5-cost backline, lightning throwing, attack damage, maybe even ability power, debonair sniper unit. Has anybody got a chance to play or test with Zeri yet? How does it feel to have another 5-cost kind of running around the board carry, a little bit akin to Kai'Sa?
I've played a good amount of games as Zerion, and honestly, she was kind of on the weaker side at first. The first like week of PvE, she just it didn't really seem to matter what you built on her. She just didn't do damage quick enough, basically. And she'd avoid a lot. She'd like run around and she'd take a long time to die, but she just didn't kill the other board. I think now she's definitely in a much better space, and it seems like a lot of people are building AD on her, but I think there might be some opportunities to go some, like, I don't think a death cap would be bad on her. But still a lot of experimentation needs to be required, but she definitely seems stronger now. Like there was a while where like for a few days I would just avoid her completely. Like she was basically like a dead spot in my shop, you know. But now, like after today, I might start picking Zeri up a little bit more often and trying her again.
Interesting to have a sniper unit that runs around the board and ruins its sniper buff. I find that a very interesting design choice.
Yeah.
Overall.
Zooms
Well,
around. I don't know what's going on.
I mean, like it's not that bad because she generally stays away from most people. And remember, it's like you get damage per hex. So even if she's not completely on the other side of the board, she's still like a few hexes away. So it's still a decent percentage damage buff. So I think it's okay. It might feel weird, but if you really think about it, like if you think about the math, like it's not that bad. She's not losing that much damage.
At least she's not
usually.
going to like the middle of the board. She's like
Yeah,
in the
she's not like
corner.
Samira or something like
It's
that. Like
just
5-star
yeah.
Samira back in the day. Yeah, 5 costs. Yeah.
Yeah. Same with Jinx. Very interesting. I think that we have a very interesting new format upon us, and that is going to be, I think, impartially defined by a big new trait that they've included, Hex Tech. It has a lot of very interesting new units, most of which we haven't even covered yet. And that's because there's just so much new stuff, guys. We can't do it all. They're basically all new units. Nothing's been reclassified as far as I can remember off the top of my head right now. But we do have some return of some old favorites in Lucian, in Siva from previous sets, who I'm sure you will all remember. And we have a new arrival in Alistair, the replacement Colossus for Scion. I was wondering what your guys' thoughts, we'll go to Drowsy on this one, on Hex Tech have been so far.
Honestly, I played a bit of Hextech, but not enough. But Silver Veil's very strong. Like Silver Sejuani, feels very strong. Jarvan's cool. Jarvan's cool. It reminds me of the good old set free times, but it's not as broken as like Darkstar Jarvan. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm.
but Alistar is really cool as well. I think it's really cool because it's Alistar's first set. I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
I think so. Yeah.
Same
So
for
he's
Corki.
It is, yeah.
Oh, yeah, same for Corki. Yes. So I'm not too familiar with the Hextech thing, but the few games I played, they felt really good. And Sivir is like Sivir's a 4 cost now. I've like she has the same thing as the like 3 cost Sivir, like roughly, but now she has Ricochet. I don't know. It feels. Yeah, I feel like if you play all of these in like a vertical chase trait, it feels very strong.
Yeah, totally agree. I think one of the things that makes Alistair so interesting is that a lot of the units that you will now be seeing, a lot of which are attack damage focused, there are still plenty of AP related comps available to you, and we'll get onto one in a little bit. They all stand still, and Draven is one of those, especially if he's Debonair. He doesn't move anywhere, he can't go anywhere at all. And that means that Alistair gets a big knock up on your attack damage units. I think it's a really interesting addition to the game that plays around a lot of what I think we can anticipate to be a very strong AD focused game for the foreseeable future. Of course, there is another AP carry, and that is Ahri. Ahri is back. Soul, talk to me a little bit about Ahri. She's in a different form this time, but she is still
very
an
different form.
Arcanist.
Yeah, she's kind of weird because doesn't really scale too well with being an Arcanist. She's an Arcanist Syndicate for those who don't know. The way I've seen people typically play her is in her actual like vertical. You typically play 5 Syndicates and ideally aim for 7. The weird part about Ahri is that she doesn't really scale with damage so much as she scales more with frontline. The way her spell works is it's basically her Q, except she'll fire an extra Q for every instance of it. So it eventually spreads out into like a really, really big cone. And it can hit the backline if you put, I think, Ahri from the 3rd or 2nd row, you'll be able to hit backline. But if you put Ahri in like, your 4th row, you won't be able to, it'll be pretty hard for you to hit backline, basically, is the way it works. And then, yeah, so the way I've typically seen Ahri be successful is you play around a lot of Syndicates, you play around Morgana as your main tank, and then you just use Morgana to stall a lot for Ahri, and Ahri ramps up over time.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Ahri just needs she just needs time,
Yeah.
You can build crit build on her, which accelerates the damage a lot. Just in terms of her first orb already is doing a lot. But yeah, if you don't have a front line and give her time to build up to those other orbs, then she just gets destroyed. Playing Ahri is either you destroy their board or they totally destroy your board. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of in between when you're playing it. So it's one of those things where it's if you have what you need to make it work well, go for it. But if you don't at all, do not play it because you will die so fast. So she's a very all or nothing kind of hero.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that. It's nice to have a ticking time bomb, if you will. I think one of the big parts that made Syndicates themselves so not necessarily overpowered, but frustrating to play against was the second that you got your Akali in the late game, or you powered up your Shaco with a bunch of items. Once you got the Syndicate online, it was basically impossible to kill that unit. Where right now, if you can get to the Ahri, maybe you can actually take it out because it's not going to heal all its health back in one hit or anything like that. So they have added a certain amount of counterplay to the Syndicate model that I think a lot of people would have been very frustrated with in set 6. But it remains to be seen how strong that Ahri is actually going to be right now. She's probably in a pretty good place, but we'll have to wait and see until everybody gets their hands on more live games. I mean, between the 3 of us with the actual thing out. With the actual thing out on live, we played 4 games. So right now we're not the messiahs of 6.5 knowledge. But come back to us in a week or two, and we'll have plenty of comps and things to play.
I played 2 games and I went 8th, as Monkeys point out.
Yeah,
that's rough.
It's a rough start.
I
So,
really don't know how I'm gonna do once PvE is well tomorrow, because it's like in the US it's not released yet. We get it tomorrow morning, but because I've just part of PvE is I just experiment so much, like I don't really play it. I don't try hard on PvE. So when it comes to actually jumping the ladder, sometimes there's that phase where you're like, oh yeah, now I have to actually like not make dumb decisions just to try things out. I have to like do that on an alt account now,
Yeah.
So I'll have to go through that process again.
For real.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right.
guys, I think
That's all the champions, right?
yeah, we've pretty much gone through absolutely
I think
everything.
we actually managed to get through most of them.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
It's a pretty
Not
good
bad.
effort, I
Alright.
would say so myself.
Impressive.
Guys, look, when it comes to this episode, if you're listening to this a couple of days later, a lot of this information about what may be very good or what may be very bad, it's up to chance really at the moment. It's a lot of our experience from PBE, but we've entered the part of the show where we go to questions from our audience. So if you are listening live on Twitch, that means you can ask questions in the chat. Feel free to ask questions, or if you're listening on the audio version or on the YouTube, we stream this twitch.tv/Cutler. That's with a 3 instead of the E. I'm going to hand it over to my very capable co-host Sol, who is our question facilitator. So guys, if you got any questions in the chat, could be for Drowsy, could be for Doa, could be for us, could be for anybody about set 6.5, about set 6, maybe not about anything, but keep it TFT related, please. Otherwise, we'll go on to some of the ones that were submitted early.
I was just on the other monitor building a cipher board. Sorry, go ahead.
There you go. So some of these questions are going to be aimed at Doa, obviously, being our most esteemed guest, and we've had Drowsy already on the pod anyway. So I guess I'll focus on the
Sorry,
ones.
Drowsy.
I'm out.
I'll focus on the ones for Doa first.
So anyway, thanks very much, Drowsy, for joining the episode.
Thank you.
So I think I quite like this one a lot. So in contrast to League of Legends, right, the sort of most hype moments of sort of brilliance in TFT tend to be a lot more subtle. They're not as flashy, I would say, in comparison. Sort of how does that affect how you actually cast it during an event?
I think you have to really be aware of how to express something like that, because you can't. I've heard people sometimes casting TFT rounds as if they were casting a team fight in League of Legends, and I don't agree with that, because it's not a human being controlling those champions, so it feels a bit disingenuous. But I think in that case, what you need to do is during the actual fights, you need to hype up the big unexpected moments, the interactions that you are not ready, or you don't normally see, or you talk about a great Zephyr, a great Shroud, some of those last minute pivots or little board changes that makes a big difference. And then during the actual like eco phase, during the buy phase, you have to really be good about pinpointing what specific things are relevant to talk about. And the thing is TFT at the end of the day, like, it's just a lower key game. It's not the big TFT is never going to be like the big arena filling game that like League of Legends is, or something like that, and that's okay. That's not a problem with TFT, right? Because like imagine 60,000 people in an arena to watch chess, right? It feels a bit strange, right? And it's not because chess is an undeserving game. It's a great game. It's not that kind of game. It's not the game where you jump up and down and cheer for, right? So I think there's definitely big hype moments in TFT, but it does generally, unless something totally wild happens, which it does happen once in a while, I think generally it needs to be a little bit more subtle, and it just operates better that way, because a lot of people who watch competitive TFT watch it to learn rather than just to be entertained, and so I think that has to be a big part of the broadcast too. But TFT casting is still something that's like very much in development and in flux, so I can't say one way or another is like the right way or the wrong way to cast TFT, because it's still pretty new, so we're still figuring it out.
Sure.
I think as we go along,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's still only been like 2 years, I think. Are we entering our third year now?
We're in our third year, I think. Yeah, almost.
I want to say we're only just entering our third year, so I mean, the game is still quite young, and it already feels like Yeah, it already feels like we've come so far, right?
Mhm.
I know it does.
But it is still only the third year. So yeah, that's it's for sure pretty interesting. Cool. So this is the other one. That's for Dollar. So, for somebody who's for anybody, like basically, yeah, for anybody out there who's like interested in becoming like a caster, what are like the tips that you can give sort of novices, that they can take away from someone who's extremely experienced like you are in the scene?
I think the number one thing I always say is to just, and it sounds cliche, but it's just to go and do it. Just go make content. Like if
Mm.
you want to be a caster, don't wait for somebody to give you an opportunity to cast. Like, go record your own commentary over, VODs or over replays, right? And then submit them somewhere and ask them for feedback, right? Find little local tournaments that are looking for casters. And don't expect to get paid right away, because everyone's got to start somewhere, right? So I mean, I did it for like, I mean, things went very quickly for me, but there was still like 6 months where I didn't get paid to do casting. It's just how it is at the beginning. It's even longer for most people now. So while you're doing those things, while you're making content and you're doing those smaller events, you're doing two crucial things. The first thing is that you are practicing, which means you're going to be getting better because nobody starts out good at this. I sucked when I started, like everybody does, and I got better because I did a lot. The other thing that you get from just doing it is you show prospective employers that you are ambitious and that you are working on improving, right? Because if you've got two people, and they're both trying to get this casting job, and you go back and look at what they've done, I'm 100% going to hire the person who has been putting out content consistently for like months, if not years,
Mm.
and shows like progression as a caster, rather than someone who's like, oh, I have a good voice, so therefore I deserve this. You don't deserve
Right.
anything. You got to work for it. So I think honestly, just getting out there and doing it, creating opportunities for yourself is the best thing you can do.
Awesome.
Great advice.
All right, that's so great to
It's
hear.
also
Cool. All right, got a few more sort of more generic ones, I guess. I guess this one can just be sort of towards anybody. So the hype for a mid set is often at its peak during the early days of PvE, and then it sort of tends to peter out for like the following week, right? Do you think that there's a future where sort of Riot releases the PvE content only a couple of days before the live experience, rather than the current standard sort of 2 weeks?
no.
I don't think so.
No.
It defeats the purpose, doesn't it?
I think so too, but
Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like it needs a lot of fine tuning. Like there's a lot of broken stuff like the first day, and it needs a few like more than like 3 days to like even those out before it's ready for live.
There was
Yeah.
an interesting discussion that Mort had on one of his AMAs or one of his streams where he talked about the desire to get pro players in really early on the setup of a TFT set, basically so that they could have the set popularized or ready to go from a really early place. This is why I thought this was really interesting. Mort talked about like having a lot of the pro players come in really early, get their thoughts, and then get the game to a really polished state where they could actually release it without an extremely long PBE experience. I think what makes the PBE so fun is that it's so wild. It doesn't. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a. It doesn't have to be a
Mm.
perfectly fine-tuned piece of content because you're not going there to climb ranks or chase high elo or to overtly
Mm.
improve your LP. You're going there to sort of mess around and learn some new stuff. So
Yeah, and I mean, most players don't play PBE too. So for as far as like the hype goes, you're still going to get like a bigger wave of hype when it actually launches, right? Because that's when like,
Sure.
Yeah.
I bet you like maybe 10% of players play PBE. I would be shocked if it was more than that. Most players, the vast majority of the millions of people that play TFT are just casual players that play it on their phone, or they log in for a couple games after work, or like a game during lunch or something. So most of those players have never seen any of the stuff in the set or the mid set before the actual live launch.
And I
So
feel like Set
yeah.
6's launch was like to like the public servers. was actually pretty huge. Like all my friends were talking about set 6 more than like PBE, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, I was talking to like a good friend of mine who is a fellow caster, and he was like, "Oh, is there new TFT stuff coming out?" And I'm like, "Yeah, 6.5 comes out." And he's like, "Oh, the last time I played, they had these things called shadow items in the game." And I'm like, "Oh, dude, you got to come back now. It's way better." So things are different now, you know. But that's representative of your casual TFT player. They might take
Mm.
a set or two off, even, you know. So yeah, I think the PvE cycle is probably just fine. You know, those of us who are interested in it are going to be in there giving feedback, and like the casual fans don't need to be, you know. So yeah.
So I think we might just do one more question because I do know you need to be heading off soon, Doa. So this one's from the chat from our good friend Viagra. The basic question is essentially the thoughts on like the need to sort of have a sort of specific. I mean, the question is framed around TFT, but it can be any game. Specific rank to be able to sort of analyze and comment on a broadcast. Because we know that Mort recently did a dev blog on why players shouldn't expect their designers to be very high ranked in the games that they balance.
Right.
How does this
Mm.
parallel in the casting world?
It depends on the game. I think it's a case by case basis. If you look at, we can take two games in the same client for this example. We can look at League of Legends, in which I think you could be a top analyst in the game and have literally never played a game of League of Legends. Because if you think about it, your playing experience in League of Legends will never be anywhere remotely close to what you see the pros experiencing. Like, unless you are a pro who has retired to become an analyst, right? Even if you get to like the highest ranks of challenger on the ladder in League of Legends and Summoner's Rift, you will still be playing games that are nowhere near what you're going to be seeing in the LCS or the LCK, right? So that's a game where playing it yourself, I don't think does a whole lot of good from the caster side of things. I think it's still good to play a little bit. You know, I mean, for me as a play-by-play caster, I would play because I think it's good to be able to have the same feelings as the player base and like be able to relate those experiences to what you're seeing in game, where it's like somebody hooks you over the wall, you're like you know how that feels, and that can come through in your casting, you know, better. So I think there is a reason to play, but at the end of the day, you don't need it that much. Whereas TFT, I think, is kind of on the other side. Whereas a caster, because what you're talking about a lot of times in TFT is what the player is probably thinking about in terms of what changes they may want to make for their board, what they're looking for, what they're worried about their opponent doing. And I think a lot of that is gained from playing the game at a high level. And I think it's unreasonable to expect casters to be like challenger level players for the most part, because a lot of us don't have time to play that many games, frankly. I know I don't. And so I think you can learn then from a combination of being good enough at the game to know a lot of the core concepts, you know, being like high diamond, low masters, and then also interacting with professional players to review your casting or to ask them questions. Because at that point you have access to those people, you know, so they can kind of fill in those gaps, and that's worked pretty well. But it's a game I think that you do need to have a pretty high level to be able to cast well, for sure. So the short answer is it depends on the game. You know,
Yep.
it's every game is different.
Fascinating.
It definitely does. Yeah, it definitely does sound like for games like TFT that are a lot more sort of just math heavy, they just have more numbers involved that are just sort of more, and just have a lot more sort of more subtle, less flashy interactions. You definitely need to like play the game. But then for things like, as you mentioned, right, things like League, where you will never be able to emulate that level of coordination, like in a team, the level
Yeah.
of the mechanics that are on display, right? Like with that, you don't actually necessarily need to play the game a lot. You just need to sort of watch the game and actually talk to people and understand how it works.
Yep. I'd agree.
All right, I think that's all the questions I've got. Again, yeah, on behalf of behalf of the Roll Down podcast, really appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate Drowsy as well for coming on.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
let Bodhi close us out.
Guys, I mean, what a special episode it's been. I really hope that if you're listening to this on the live, you've learned a little bit about some of our thoughts going into set 6.5. It's going to be a big set for us personally here at the Roll Down Podcast. And I mean, we're kicking it off with a pretty special bang here, having our first international guest and someone with such great pedigree come to join us. Doa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real treat.
Hey, my pleasure. It was a ton of fun. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Drowsy Sword,
Yes.
our returning
Yes.
guest. We're going to get you on for the start of every set. I think it's going to become a recurring
Oh, yes.
theme.
I'm down.
I don't want anybody else on these podcasts for the start of sets
Aw.
except you. And that's all I have
Aw.
to say. It's been a real treat to have you as well.
Thank you so much, guys. See you in set 7.
See you for
I'll be
set
back.
7. Guys, look, if
Right.
you're listening to this on the audio stream, you can catch us Tuesday nights in Australia, or sometimes if we have overseas guests, it might be Wednesday lunchtime like it was today. And you can find myself at Twitter at CutlerTFT. Soul is Soul_TFT on Twitch. And Doa, just a final shout out for you. Where can people find you if they aren't familiar with your work?
Just GG Doa on Twitter and GG Doa on Twitch are the 2 best places.
Drowsy Sword, your final words. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitch TV / Drowsy Sword with an O, with a 0 instead of the O, and lowercase d. Same thing for Twitter. It's the same username. So find me there.
All right, guys. Well, this has been episode 15 of the Roll Down podcast. Stay tuned for the post show where we reveal who is going to be on next week. Until that time, my name is Cutler, and for Soul, Drowsy, and Doa, thank you very much for listening. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.